Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive EV, live on YouTube. It's good to be here. Hopefully, uh, there's been some setups behind the scenes. Hopefully, the internet's fine. I apologize in advance if there's frame drops. We should be good, though, which is exciting because I want to talk about the Bolt again. I know it's not the most clickable vehicle. It's definitely not the most high-in-demand vehicle, but I'll dive into that in a second. But GM basically is going completely against the grain right now, and they're doing something that essentially no one is doing in regards to vehicles of any kind, let alone electric vehicles, but they actually announced price reductions of the Chevy Bolt and the Bolt EUV, which is basically just a slightly longer version of the Bolt. Because I guess the reason, their theory is the reason most people aren't interested in the Bolt is because it's too small. Um, so they introduced the EUV, which is an electric utility vehicle. Very vague terminology, but these were already fairly affordable electric vehicles on the market, and the price hikes are fairly substantial. So beforehand, they were starting around $32,000 for the cheapest, and they've announced that the next generation Bolt, the 2023 variant, which because GM is more traditional auto, they do that thing where, you know, they start building the 2023 variant like way before 2023 actually comes. So from what I've read, this new variant that they're describing with 18% lower starting price, that's going to start production next month around July 21st or so, which is weird because there's a lot of Bolts in stock, actually. I was curious about this because I thought it was crazy that they were lowering the price of the already very affordable Bolt to, yes, the thumbnail of this stream is accurate, 26 and a half grand. And that includes the dealer freight shipping cost. So, yeah, that's what Scott's saying, but who wants a Bolt? That's the problem. I'm under the belief that I don't think they're selling that great. Which is a shame because at least on paper and at least how it appears on the website and especially the newer Bolts more so than the old design is that they're pretty decent, good-looking cars, and they get fairly respectable range, 259 mile estimated by the EPA on the base model, and the price is not bad. The biggest downside, I would say, at least on paper, is the charge time. Most Bolts are basically limited to 50 kilowatts, which is not that great. Means it takes an hour or so or an hour or longer to go from a low state of charge up to high enough again for you to get back on the road. Will GM have the touchscreen like this? Well, yes, they have a touchscreen. It supports CarPlay, and the newer Bolts have Super Cruise even, which many people, I don't personally believe this, but many people have said they prefer Super Cruise to Tesla Autopilot. I personally prefer Autopilot because it basically works anywhere. I mean, Dirty Tesla was showcasing in the most recent video today that you can even use FSD beta on vehicles on roads without lines, whereas Super Cruise requires pre-mapped highways. But I will cave and admit that one advantage to Super Cruise is that you don't have to keep your hands on the wheel. It literally can just monitor your eyes, and you can just sit there like this. You can be in the front seat of the car, and as long as your eyes are on the road, it will take control. But again, that's on pre-mapped highways. It doesn't work anywhere. So I'm not trying to say that the Bolt is by any means better than a Tesla, but it's also getting close to half the price. Like, seriously, half. Like, we're at the point now where the Model 3 is starting at $47,000 for the rear-wheel drive LFP version, and the Bolt, this new version that they're going to introduce next month, is starting at $26,500 and still gets over 250 miles per charge. So it's not it's not like insanely cheap because it's like a Leaf where, you know, it can barely go over 100 miles per charge or it's barely touching 200. This is like far above 200 and for much, much lower. So I know that's what Tesla talked about at Battery Day as being kind of the end goal of wanting to make electric vehicles cheaper than gas even up front. You don't even have to factor in cost of ownership because maybe GM doesn't have enough demand for the Bolt. they may actually start hitting that price point of a 250-mile range EV for about $25,000. I'm sure you could do the math on the inflation of when Tesla announced that they wanted to do a $25,000 car, which was at the end of 2020. Adjusted to now, I'm sure it would go up a bit, probably even more than that. It would probably be like $27,000 or so. But the fact that that vehicle will exist, that undercuts a lot of gas vehicles. And, I haven't had the pleasure, or maybe I shouldn't say the pleasure. I haven't had the nightmare of test driving a Bolt. From the people I've talked to who have driven them, they're not particularly, yeah, like you said, they're not luxurious, but I don't think anyone is expecting a $25,000 car to be luxurious. Many people would describe Teslas as not luxurious, even though to me they're perfectly luxury. It's not a very firm definition on what luxury is in the automotive market, but yeah, like Nicholas said, margins, what even are those? I want to talk more about that, because we got to be fair, right? We got to compare both sides. From the consumer perspective, I think this is a tremendously good deal. There's a lot of people out there that would love a Tesla and totally would buy one, but they don't have the money. We're heading into a recession at this point, and there's probably a crap ton of people that are just like, yeah, no, I cannot afford a $40,000 or $50,000 car. Most of Tesla and most people probably want something with a hatchback design that's more practical than a Model 3. That's why the Model Y is selling so well, is because it's more practical. Model Y is starting at $63,000. It's great, and Tesla has made a very desirable product, and a lot of people want it for sure, but it is simply out of the price range for so many demographics out there. And if you're sick of paying for gas because it's literally never been higher, gas prices are insane right now, and you're in the market for a new vehicle and you don't want to pay for gas anymore, I got to admit, I would probably start to recommend the Bolt to a lot of people out there. The fact that you're getting super duper close or undercutting many, many new gas vehicles. And once you take delivery of that $26,500 EV, now you get to reap the benefits of home charging, or, of course, even Electrify America or ChargePoint is going to be far cheaper than gas is right now. So that's an incredible value. Like hats off to GM for actually getting the price that much further, especially in this inflationary environment where, excuse me, when the US dollar is being worth less and less and less over time. The fact that most vehicle prices are going way, way up. Rivian had to jack up their prices by like 20% once they started mass producing their vehicles, and they were like, oh, wait a minute, we can't sell these for this less. And then they found out, oh, GM is actually lowering prices by close to 20%. That's amazing. Tesla did raise prices due to inflation, though. I think it was a multitude of reasons, but inflation is definitely one of them. For one, it's demand. For two, it's also what they've said on earnings calls about the price hikes, and what Elon has said is, and the more I think about it, the more sense it makes. If you really think about how long it takes for Tesla to build a vehicle and then ship it to someone and deliver it, it's really not that long in the grand scheme of things. Like, they build the car, it probably leaves the factory, sits on a semi-truck for a while, and then they bring it to a delivery center, and then you take delivery. That whole process is probably less than 2 weeks, depending on where you are. If you're far from the factory, it probably takes longer. But at least if you're within a reasonable distance to the factory, there's probably, in the grand scheme of things, 2 weeks to a month for the car to be built and then delivered to you. Okay, maybe I'm over-exaggerating. Maybe it's 2 months, okay? Let's double my estimate. Let's say it takes 2 months for the car to be delivered to you after it's been built. When there's such a tremendous demand backlog like there is right now, most of the Model Y, in fact, like the base model, the one most people order, the long range, you're ordering that, and Tesla isn't going to be able to deliver it for like a year, sometimes more than a year. So to set a price and lock in a price for a customer for a vehicle that you're not going to build for another 12 months, that's really, really sketchy, because you don't know what the materials are going to cost by then. You don't know what other chip shortages or nickel shortages, lithium shortage, any kind of world event that could take place. And you don't know how much US dollars the Federal Reserve is going to keep printing. You don't know what the inflation rate's going to be like in a year. Yeah, like, Tesla locking in prices a year in advance, that's a bit scary for them. So I understand why they do raise prices. It's perfectly logical, but let's bring it back to the Bolt for a second. Why are they cutting prices this much? 20% on an already very affordable EV. As far as like EVs that you can actually do more than just city driving. You can buy a smart electric car for probably $10,000 or less, and the range is what, 80 miles, or the Mini Cooper SE. Although that one's still pretty expensive, but there's a lot of like $30,000 or less EVs that just have very bad range. That you're like, there's no chance of you road tripping with that thing. The Bolt, while it may not be great at road tripping, and a Tesla will certainly be better, is capable of comfortably going over 200 miles per charge. So what motivated GM, when demand is as high as it is and everyone else is raising prices, what motivated GM to say, let's apply a 18% price cut? I know I thought I'd never say this, but I think it's a lack of demand. And I have some evidence to back this up. I was so curious because I was like, wait, when do these prices go into effect? Here's the other bad idea that GM has just done. So, yeah, I've been boasting about it the first 10 minutes of this stream, and I still think it's a great bargain. So far, you can't officially like order that lower price Bolt yet, but that should come next month. It's announced, it's official, it's not a rumor, it's not a leak. This is from the horse's mouth. Mary being the horse. No, I'm kidding. But I plugged in the cheapest possible Bolt I could find, and I made it the color I want. I went on the website, I spec'd it out the way I liked it, and then I plugged in my zip code. There are several of this exact spec within my area, and I don't live in a very populated area, for the record. I'm in a very rural community, and my closest Chevy dealers that are not that far away have them available for delivery next day. Seriously. Like, I could literally, I'm trying to make sure I don't dox myself here, but this exact Bolt that's currently for $32,000, but the price will go down next month, is estimated delivery date. It's gonna be all blurred out. You can see it. Estimated delivery date June 2nd. Basically, I could drive there right now and say I would like a Bolt and get one tomorrow. Essentially, like, they're in stock. And I played around with the configurator and found that I think that after all of the recalls, right, all of the combustion complaints about the batteries and GM having to shut down production and get the batteries all worked out, it's essentially there's less people ordering Bolts. And GM's reasoning for this is all that they care about affordability and they just want it to be more accessible to the customer. Which may be true, but I'm sure that the profit margin has to be either razor thin or non-existent on the Bolt for them to sell it at this price. Like, there's no way, in my opinion, that it costs less than $26,000 to build a vehicle with a battery pack that large. Even if it's a pouch battery, especially, I'm sure GM's material costs are going up. Everyone's costs are going up. There's no way it hasn't... there's no way it hasn't hit GM yet. I think they've reached the point where the stigma around Bolts and the appeal is just not there. People just don't want Bolts, and the specs can't save it, essentially. Like, it doesn't matter that it's affordable or that the range is good. It's just that there's this concern that GM has lost a lot of people's interest just on the fact that there's been so many recalls. I think there were multiple in a row. Neighbor of mine has a first-gen Bolt they charge overnight in the driveway, hasn't burned down their home yet. Well, that's the thing, is like, I know they got recalled, but it was not like every single Bolt that combusted, despite what people say. As much as we joke about that, and I've made those jokes myself whenever we drive by a Bolt on the freeway, I'm like, oh, okay, prepare for impact. Excuse me. But in my view, when Tesla wait times are this long, and, you know, Mach-E's, they shut off the order for them, and it's not that easy to get a hold of a VW ID4, for the record. But the fact that I have multiple options in a fairly rural area for me to just pick up a Bolt when I feel like it tomorrow if I wanted to for MSRP, not a big dealer markup or anything like that. I get the feeling that they're not selling. And they've started production up again. The production was shut down for many, many months. That's why we had that hilarious metric of GM being called the leader of EVs despite delivering 26 in Q4 of last year. Tesla delivered over 300,000. GM delivered 26 EVs. Um, so I think that they were shut down for a while and now they're coming back and they're just not seeing that much interest. It's like people are buying electric and EV adoption is growing. There's more people buying EVs than ever before, but there's some kind of stigma, there's some kind of reputation that the Bolt has made for itself that it's just not what people are looking for when they're wanting to buy an EV. Um some kind of competition has to exist. I don't think we're at the point where you can experience the benefits of competition, to be honest. Like, I know that there's a reason you don't want a monopoly. I'm not saying Tesla should be the only car company. Far from it. I actually know, I genuinely know a bunch of people that just would not like the way Tesla does things. There's things Tesla does that I appreciate, like I like everything being on a screen. I don't like physical dials and knobs, and even though the glove box doesn't have a latch on it, I'm like, great. I'm all about software. Even when I was a kid, I would use I still do to this day. I use my iPad with the virtual keyboard. I tried the physical keyboard and I didn't like it because I just preferred things to be on a display. I preferred software to hardware pretty much every time. I would take a device with better software with weaker hardware than another. I'm always been a software guy, and I like minimalism. I like simplicity, and I like designs being very, very practical and just futuristic. And I'm even willing to take a hit sometimes in practicality for the sake of being futuristic. And that's what Tesla does with their designs. Is they're like, yeah, we got rid of the gear stocks, or we got rid of this, or we're gonna do this autonomously. You don't need a start or stop button. You just get in the car and it goes. I love that, but I know a ton of people, like my parents would be a great example of someone, they do not want everything to be on a screen. My parents would much rather have a dial and buttons and controls and physical things for them to interact with. And Tesla's going to focus on production ramping, so they're just going to keep things simple and have fewer options and that kind of thing, or take away the mobile connector and that kind of, look for places that they can get away with. And because there's so much demand, Tesla doesn't care. They're like, well, we can scrap that, we can get rid of this, and it's not going to matter because people will still buy our stuff. Whereas there's other people that, would absolutely prefer something like a Rivian or a VW ID4, and that just fits their needs better. So it's good that we don't just have Tesla, but the problem, I think, is that EV adoption is so supply constrained and so high in demand that we're not really reaping the benefits of competition. Like, the reason you want a competitive market is so that the companies strive to do better than each other, right? Like, if you have Rivian or Tesla or VW and Hyundai, if they're going up against each other, they're going to try their best to make the better product so that they can win over your business, right? Right now, like, there's so many people trying to buy electric that I don't think there's that much competition in regards to the major players, whether it's Ford or Tesla. Like, Ford is selling every EV they can make easily with super high markups. Even with $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 dealer markups, Ford will still sell every single EV they make. Same thing with Tesla. They can raise their prices. They can get rid of the mobile connector. They can take out speakers. They can take out features. They got rid of radar. They can remove things, and they know that the demand is there, that it's not going to hurt them. They can just keep raising prices and get away with it. So that's kind of the benefit of competition. I don't think we have that yet, just because there's so much demand. Like, you're not gonna we're not reaching a point anytime soon where someone's gonna make an electric pickup truck and not be able to sell it, because there's so much demand for electric trucks that every one you make, someone will be willing to buy, even if it's $100,000, even if it's $150,000. Someone's gonna be like, yep, I want an electric F-150, or I want a Cybertruck, and they'll buy it. The closest thing I've ever seen to an EV demand problem, I think, now is the Bolt, considering, I don't know. GM would never publicly say we're having a hard time selling the Bolt, but in an environment where inflation is at a very very high rate, and the cost of components, the cost of supplies are all going up, and I can buy a Bolt tomorrow if I feel like it and take delivery tomorrow, unlike every other EV on the market, which you have to wait months or years for. I am going to go out on a limb and say that this massive price reduction in the Bolt is to accelerate adoption, and there's not enough people ordering them. That's my prediction. Um, Used Bolts are selling like hotcakes online. 2017 for $20,000 to $25,000. Well, that's a good deal. I mean, it's you got to suck up your pride a little bit, but this is that market share problem. Sorry, I don't know what you were referring to, Elizabeth, but I wouldn't worry about market share with EVs that much right now because the market is constantly growing. Every year the EV market grows a lot. So measuring what percentage of who gathers the most of that, if the market is constantly changing in size and growing, market share doesn't really mean much because you could have one company growing at an astounding rate, but their market share could stay the same because everyone's growing at the same time. So market share doesn't really matter too much in the EV space right now. It's just how many can you build. That's what really matters. Um, there's a couple things about everything being on a screen that I find dangerous. Example, the wiper controls. Yeah, I mean, most of the time the car is just going to do its best to turn on the wipers when it detects rain. Again, I don't have much experience with that. I've heard people complain that the Tesla's not great at it, but there's not data that shows that Teslas are prone to getting in more accidents. It's like, I'm going to have time to go on the display and turn on the windshield wipers because the car's going to be driving. It'll be on autopilot, so whatever. The advantages of knob and buttons: the controls are muscle memory, don't have to take eyes off the road. How much of Tesla-like controls can you use without looking? Well, I haven't had an ownership of a Tesla in a while, but I think there's ways to work around that. For one is voice commands. For one, the second one is automatically adjusting the windshield wipers based on how hard the rain is. I can see the muscle memory thing being preferred, but again, Teslas, even without autopilot turned on, are statistically shown to get in less accidents than average vehicles do. Resale on the first gen Leaf and BMW i3 cratered, and even now they don't seem like a good buy. Well, yeah, that's because they're city cars. They're not exactly like the Bolt in that they don't go over. A lot of those don't even go over 100 miles of range. Bolt is at a mass market price point, though. A lot of standard range 3 and Y reservations will go bye-bye. We'll see. I would love for that to happen because then it would mean I could get my car sooner, but if anything, I've been checking the subreddits, and most people are getting estimated delivery dates pushed back further. Model 3 and Y have stock controls for wipers. Do they? I guess they do. I have them memorized, but I know that there's a button on the steering yoke on the S and X that you can press for windshield wiper stuff. Why do we still have wiper controls? This should be automatic already. Yeah, on Teslas, I believe it is automatic. It's just the automatic wipers are not always exactly right, or exactly the way they should be from what I've read. When I get my car, hopefully next month. Oh my God, that feels nice to say. My estimated delivery date is at the end of next month. I've never been able to say that. When I get my car, I can talk about what I do and don't like, and I'll try to be honest if I get to a point where I'm like, I wish this was a physical button or dial or something. If I find that, I'll say it. But I'll also mention I prefer the Model S and X approach to the gear selection, and I like the automatic shift, and I like the blinkers being buttons instead of stocks. I just from a design perspective and from a lot of reviews I've watched, many people prefer it already. And if they brought that to the 3 and Y, I would be happy. I know it wouldn't please everybody, but if I could at checkout say I want a yoke and no gear stocks, I would do it personally. You guys might not be ready for that, but your kids are gonna love it. Yeah, right. Neuralink's got a ways to go. Ordered base Model Y October 31st. Date keeps getting kicked back every week. Exactly. That's what I keep seeing a lot on Reddit from Travis. People like Travis that are like, I ordered back here, and they said it would be ready by now, and then it gets pushed back further. Um, the wiper stock on the 3 and Y don't control all the wiper functions. I see. Yeah, there's some things they don't do, but I just don't think it's as big a deal as people make it out to be. Um, in the meantime, we are going to have to drill a lot more because not everyone can afford EVs right now. I don't like it, but it's part of reality. No, I agree. I agree with Elon on that. We still need oil. We still need gas in the meantime. We're not going to be able to just flip a switch and get everyone onto EVs overnight. Like we need gas in the meantime. I need gas to drive to get my Tesla. Like that's a small closed box analogy, but it's true. It's like Tesla needs gas to transport EVs. All of the semi-trucks they move their equipment and cargo and EVs with, all of those semi-trucks require diesel. So Tesla's costs of operation goes up whenever the price of diesel and gas go up. So we need it in the meantime. I do think we could get rid of the California gas tax, though. I know that taxes are just inherently higher in California because they want to encourage people to buy EVs and that kind of thing. But to me, it's ridiculous because it's not. We're not demand constrained, unless you're the Bolt. I guess maybe the Bolt is demand constrained because that's why they got to lower the prices so much. Yeah, we definitely need gas, and the gas tax basically just punishes people that can't afford EVs. In my opinion, we should try to lower the price of gas in the meantime because, like, I'm not in favor of trying to make owning a gas car worse so that people can justify buying an EV. I'm in favor of, let gas be the way it is. If anything, stop subsidizing oil and gas. Let it cost what it costs and try to make EVs at scale and try to make EVs better than gas. You don't have to artificially inflate the price of gas to make EVs worth it. Or artificially lower the price of EVs. That's the other thing, is everyone was in favor of the federal tax credit because that would artificially lower the price because you could just knock off $7,000 or $10,000 off the price of every EV. And I'm like, but that's not sustainable because we want all vehicles to be electric eventually. And all that does is influx demand, which we don't really need more of. So, yeah. The gas tax does help pay for roads, Brent. That's true. I just think that a lot of states clearly can get by without it, but I guess there's more roads in California. It seems like a tax on the poor that the rich kind of get to bypass. I guess there is some taxes on EVs now, but I don't think it is equivalent to that of what you pay on the extra, 10 or 30 cents per gallon for all the people that are driving gas cars because they can't afford EVs. Use income tax for roads instead of gas tax. I'm pretty much in favor of eliminating as many taxes as possible, but I know that California was in discussion of should we send out stimulus checks to California residents to compensate them for the gas tax? And I was like, just get rid of the gas tax. I get it if there's a lot of cost of operations to maintaining the roads, but taxing lower income people is not a great plan. In my opinion, take taxes away from people who can afford it, not the people who can't, plus EV drivers still have to pay for the gas tax. They have a different way of calculating it though. From what I've seen, EVs pay a one-time fee in registration for the gas tax, which is, from what I can tell, a fixed amount. It's a fixed price for all EVs, whereas if you're driving a gas car, the amount you pay in the gas tax gets progressively higher depending on how much you drive. So I guess their logic is, well, they're driving more, so they have to pay more to maintain the roads. But again, that's a lower income demographic. I don't know. That's kind of a side tangent. It's not really EV related, but either way, I don't think we need to. I know that's not the only reason they applied the gas tax, but I don't think we need to artificially make gas prices higher to encourage EV adoption. Just make EVs better. If you make more EVs, you can make them more affordably, and people will naturally switch. You don't have to raise the price of gas artificially. Getting rid of the gas tax is like robbing Peter to pay Paul. How are you going to pay for roads? I don't know exactly where you're gonna get it. I'm just saying, don't rob Pete. It's like, to me, it's like robbing Peter, who has $10, to pay Paul, who has $100. Excuse me. Stupid poor man tax covered for tonight. I bought a lotto ticket. Congrats, Mark. I hope you get it. Uh, that would be great. Anyway, that's a whole tax discussion. That can be a slippery slope. But I genuinely want to know if anybody out there wasn't in the market for a Bolt that might be interested now that the prices have gone down so much. Just because the 26 and a half grand is such a good value, considering you won't have to pay for gas anymore. That very well could be the cheapest new car on the market when you factor in cost of ownership after like 5 or 10 years or so. Like, you think about it. You think about how much gas is going to cost someone on a. I don't even think new gas cars get that cheap anymore. Like, especially the price of everything going up and inflation. It's hard to find a new gas car for under $20,000, and it only takes 5 or 10 years before you've spent more than the Bolt was in gas. It very well could be the cheapest new vehicle. Obviously, if you factor in the used market, it's a giant mess of what the cheap. You could buy a car from your friend for $50 really at the end of the day. But as far as like new manufactured vehicles that are coming out, um, I'm not sure. Can you guys find a gas car that you think would undercut the Bolt even after a new gas car, not used, a new gas car that would undercut the Bolt's cost of ownership after 5 or 10 years? Um, I like what Wilson said. Oh, thank you for the super chat. How much would an LFP rear-wheel drive Model Y go for? Appreciate that. It goes towards the Tesla fund. I'll have an update for you guys on that later this month. There's a few different ways to calculate it. Basically, the easiest way, in my opinion, is to look at how Tesla prices the Model 3 LFP versus long range, because that's what we have with the Model 3 to go off of, and then you can extrapolate that based on the Model Y pricing. So I can do that for you here. Let's see. $47,000 for the rear-wheel drive Model 3. I don't like these wheels. There we go. And $56,000 for dual motor all-wheel drive. So that means, big brain math, about $8,000. No, 56 plus 3. So 9,000? No. Come on, Drew, you can do this. Yeah, no, wait. 6,000 plus minus 3. Okay. So $9,000 difference between these two. Dual motor, all-wheel drive. This did get a price hike recently, and this was not part of the price hikes. But then if we go to Model Y at $63,000, I believe that's still the same, correct? Okay. So if we apply that same $9,000 price difference, then you would get it to about $54,000. If Tesla wanted to apply this in the same way. It's possible that they won't price it the same difference. I think the Model S and X have different price differences between long range and plaid, but ballpark, I would say around 55 or 54. At the same time, they may want to avoid cannibalizing long range sales, so they may not price it that low if they did introduce it. But again, I don't think they're going to. They probably could if they wanted to secure higher margins on, I don't know, maybe if they have a limited number of LFP packs coming from China every month, and they're like, okay, we can only build so many Teslas with LFP batteries. If we sold it in a Model Y, it would be a $55,000 sale, versus if we sold it in the Model 3, it would be a $47,000 sale. So maybe the margins would be better if they switched it to the Y, but I think it would just complicate manufacturing. They would have to shut down manufacturing lines in order to switch everything over. And they probably just don't want to switch everything over right now when demand is as high as it is. They just got to keep catching up on orders as much as they can. Excuse me. I can only think of $5,000 cars from Alibaba. There you go. Bolt isn't a bad car. It's just the fast charging is slow on it. I like that sentence. The fast charging is slow. Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue with the Bolt is that it's limited to 50 kilowatts at fast charging stations, which is not that great. I plugged in my go-to route. I'm sorry, it's kind of my base road trip to compare everything with, because it's a road trip I plan on taking regularly, which is the drive from my house to my parents' house. My parents moved out of state. It's basically a 15-hour drive from my place. And I plugged in the same route with the Chevy Bolt. And I think, what was it? I think it ended up being several hours longer. I plugged it in it was like over 17 hours. So basically, it was close to adding 2.5 to 3 hours to my total trip time. On like with a gas car, it would take about 14 hours. With my Model 3, it would take about 14 hours, 50 minutes or so. That's what a better route planner says. And then that same route with the Bolt is about 17 and a half hours. So that fast charging kind of eats into your trip time. But still, like, doable. I mean, it would be a long drive. It's not impossible, but it's past the point of, like, you're going to be stranded on the highway because you're out of range. But hey, it's your boy, Flyboy. Thanks for joining. 55K was right on the money. Yeah, that sounds about right if they kept the pricing equal. Do you think the tax on fuel will be shifted onto electricity when most people make the switch? I think they may switch it before that, to be honest, because, well, I mean, they're right. EVs are heavier. EVs are heavier, so they would technically do more damage to the roads. I don't really know why we tax the lower income with the gas tax and not the higher with a fixed tax. But how often do people really take long road trips? And it is an issue, but it's probably not as bad as it sounds. No, it's not that often, but there is a lot of evidence that people buy cars not for what they do every day. People buy cars so that they can cover all use cases. 100% of what they plan to do with their car, they want their vehicle to be able to do. Obviously, if we just look at daily driving routes, most people don't drive more than 40 miles a day. So why do people ask for 300 or 200 miles of range when most of us are driving around 40 miles a day? It's because people don't buy vehicles to cover 80% of their use case. If people are spending that kind of money, 10, 20, 30, $40,000, they want a vehicle that covers 100% of their use cases. And that's why pickup trucks sell very well. And it's not because every time you get in your truck, you are hauling something in the bed, or every time you get in your truck, you're towing something. No, I would say probably somewhere between 90 or 95% of the pickup trucks I see on the road are not towing or hauling anything. There's nothing in the bed. They don't have a trailer behind them. But there's still a lot of pickup trucks that sell because there are circumstances where it's very nice to have, even if it's not all the time. That's why vehicles with super low range aren't selling that terribly well, and they don't eat away from Tesla sales just because they're cheaper. It's like, some people might have that logic. Most people don't drive that far, and this vehicle is half the price of a Tesla, so it should sell better, right? It's like, not really. Less efficient vehicles use more fuel, so yeah, you pay more. It's true, but the heavier vehicles still break up the road more often. I understand why they want a tax to help pay for roads, but I'm just not in favor of it coming from lower income. Like, you don't need to make it harder for someone living paycheck to paycheck in the poverty line. Yeah, the Leaf is a city car, exactly. Something you drive to the city, get your groceries or go to work and drive back. That's what it's for. China is supposedly readying a sedan with a 1100 kilometer range using semi-solid state batteries. Yeah, I mean, I've always heard about this. New chemistry can allow this kind of range. It's really just not practical, in my opinion, to make vehicles with range that long, especially when we are so supply constrained. I think people are overly obsessed with range when it comes to EVs. It's also not like a perfectly linear adoption thing of just like, oh, in the future everyone's going to have 600-mile range EVs. It's like, you don't realize how impractical that would be, because like we just talked about, most driving is not cross-country road trips. The majority of driving is you know, to work and back, or 40 miles or so on a daily basis in the United States. Even if you double that, 80 miles. If you have a 600-mile range, but most of 80% of the year you're driving less than 100 miles a day, you are using far more energy and you are far less efficient because you have to haul around this giant battery pack everywhere you go. And you can't really just drop off some of those batteries and lower your weight. It drives the cost of the vehicle way, way up because you have to pay for all these extra batteries. It drives the efficiency down for daily driving. Sorry for the frame drops. We had a little hiccup there. It should stabilize, but that's why Tesla is finding this kind of sweet spot between 250 to 350. That kind of range is not a magic number. It's like it's enough range for you to road trip comfortably so that you can still go cross-country distances and recharge in a reasonable amount of time. It also allows them to scale the vehicle at a high enough rate that they can deliver more and more each quarter because they only are using, 60 to 80 kilowatt-hour battery packs, versus if they just said, no, every EV needs 400 miles of range, now they got to include 100 kilowatt-hours or more on every EV. That would slow the rate of adoption. So you actually get way better efficiency typically when you use smaller batteries. And that's why, personally, I don't think all EVs are going to have 400, 500-mile range in the future, because that's the most expensive part of the vehicle. Electric powertrains are not that expensive. Body panels and interior controls units and stuff, all of that stuff is not that expensive at the end of the day compared to the overall cost of the EV. So if we somehow in the future are able to make a $40,000 EV that can go 500 miles, you'll be able to, if that's feasible, if you can have comfortable profit margins on that, then you will also be able to sell a $20,000 EV that goes like 250 miles on a charge. Which do you think is going to sell better? And also, which do you think would ramp faster? More importantly than which one would sell better, it's a debate of which one could they make quicker. And if you can sell more of something and if you can ramp faster, then you can secure more revenue quicker. So, sorry for all the internet holdups. I'll close some things in the background. I'm still on T-Mobile home internet. Sometimes they're spotty. Okay. They're doing this so they don't have to pay Tesla for EV credits. Maybe that's it. I think they've just got the assembly line on the Bolt going, and they're building them, and they're coming out, but they don't have buyers. So they're like, we already invested all this money in, building up the Bolt production. We don't want to just have these sitting around. How about a car with expandable batteries so you can rent a pack when you go on a road trip or winter? That, Gustavo, you're basically describing what NIO does, which is a Chinese brand that's developing EVs. But the main issue with that is it requires there to be more batteries than there are cars. And the true limiting factor preventing EV adoption is the number of cells and the number of batteries that can be built. So if you have to have several options, like a long-range battery and a short-range battery for everyone to swap out and choose from, you would have to just constantly have batteries at the ready, and you would have to build way more batteries. So it's just not really practical. It's not as scalable as you'd think. But Tesla looked into it too. They started developing a swappable battery pack for the Model S back in the day, and they thought that would be the future. And they started doing it back in 2012, I think, 2013. They started. Ooh, sorry, my water bottle. It had water at the top, I guess. There was a bunch of people that thought battery swapping would be the future, but Tesla realized it's infinitely cheaper to just put superchargers everywhere, and it's far more scalable to just build battery packs directly into the car. Because you can do things like the structural battery pack, which saves a lot on manufacturing efficiency and cost. And trying to make something swappable that's also structural is just not very, very good idea. So, not swapping, I mean adding a second battery for extra range. Again, it's the same problem. Adding the second battery means that you have to have more battery packs than you have cars. And right now, the reason we don't have more EVs is because of batteries. So you would drastically slow the adoption rate. Like, there's a reason NIO is not outselling Tesla, despite the fact that NIO is pushing for swappable batteries and battery swapping stations. Or I think NIO pitched the concept or is even offering it now. I don't live in China, so I don't know what they do, but Neo basically offers a thing where you can have a small battery pack for daily driving, and then when you go on a road trip, you pay extra money to rent. You don't own it, but you can rent a larger battery pack to hold you over for the road trip, and then you swap back to the small battery. In theory, if there was infinite batteries, it sounds like a pretty good idea. I agree. It's creative, it's interesting, but it's not as scalable. It's the same kind of way I feel about hydrogen. Is like, okay, it's kind of cool that you can develop a fuel cell and power a motor and go on a great distance with compressed hydrogen, but how well does that scale and what does it cost? It's not worth it. Like, it's not as simple as just building a vehicle with a battery pack and putting lots of fast chargers everywhere for them to charge off of. That's the most scalable solution. Which, if you're Tesla and you care about accelerating the transition, I always try to remind people that Tesla's mission statement is not to be the best car company. I think a lot of people still mix that up. Whenever I talk about Cybertruck specs being worse than the unveiling, I feel bad. There's so many people that get mad at me when I say that. What are you talking about? That's not good. You're full of crap. You don't know what you're talking about. I feel bad for saying it, but I'm worried that there's all these high expectations and everyone's going to be disappointed unless I say something, unless I go on the record and say, guys, I really don't think the Cybertruck is going to be close to the price you think, and I don't think the range is going to be as good as you think. Um, People are like, what? But that's not what he said. That's not what he said. It's just Tesla's extremely focused on their mission statement, and their mission statement is not about making the most affordable EV. Their mission statement is not about making the highest range. It's not even about having the most models. It's not like we're the company with the most pickup truck sales. That's not their mission statement. So I just hope that people can understand at least. They may not like it. I was also frustrated that they got rid of the standard range Model Y. I would have totally, for my own personal needs, I would have loved an LFP rear-wheel drive Model Y. That would be perfect, and especially if it was more affordable, I could buy it and use it, and that's what we were kind of hoping for. If you go back and watch the Tesla plan when I unveiled our plan to buy one last year, it was essentially the debate was essentially like, we think that there's a 4680 Model Y coming because Tesla said they're going to do that and Giga Texas is going to build it. And I was like, well, when that comes out, it's probably going to be way better than the long range Model Y. So we were saving up anticipation for that 4680 launch. And we were like, okay, even if it comes out and it's way more expensive, then we thought maybe Fremont will start making a more affordable Model Y, since Giga Texas can take over the higher priced Model Ys, whether it's performance or long range or something. And we thought, okay, if they come out with an LFP Model Y, we'll get that. And because my expectations were wrong, Tesla ended up not making the car we wanted. And of course I was upset about that. I was annoyed by that. My wife was too. We were like, come on, like this isn't, they're not making what we want to see. But the reason they didn't is because Tesla's job isn't to make all of us happy. It's to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. And I have to admit, everything they're doing is in support of that mission. So higher margins support that. I know people are convinced that, we need a sustainable future and we need EVs. It's part of my theory on, I don't want to get political here. I'm trying not to get political best I can, but I think that a lot of people have this underdog. I'm trying to find a good way to formulate this opinion here. I don't want people to take it the wrong way. I'm gonna get myself canceled if I'm not careful. I think a lot of people support there being a cleaner future, and a lot of people want more sustainable energy, but they don't like the idea of a big company doing it. Like anytime Apple or Google or Ford or Tesla, now that they're big, anytime there's like a big billion-dollar company with like $1 trillion market cap or something like that, they're always like, no, they don't care about, they're just caring about money. They're a big company. So as soon as a company becomes successful and large and is raking in tons of money and has thick margins and has grown substantially, everyone's logic and perception towards a billion-dollar corporation is, no, they don't care about the environment. No, they don't care about sustainable energy. If you care about sustainable energy, you have to be part of this like non-profit small startup that specializes in recycling bottles on out of the ocean or planting trees. It has to be this small, happy, guy wearing flip-flops and shorts with a straw hat. That's a company or a organization that cares about the environment. And I think there's this public disconnect. There's this public perception that if you're a big, rich, powerful organization, then you can't be for the environment. And the reason I take issue with that and I disagree with that on a fundamental level is we need massive investment. We need huge companies in order to quickly accelerate. In order to make a big impact, you need like a lot of change. Like if you want to get to the point where we can eliminate the combustion engine or get rid of or at least severely reduce the oil refining business and the gasoline business, a lot of people talk about, you know, EVs aren't that much better for the environment because of how much emissions it costs to build them, but they're not factoring in the gasoline infrastructure required to maintain a gas vehicle. Not only are there emissions when you build a gas car, and when you're using the gas car, yeah, you drive a car and it spews stuff out the tailpipe, but also paying to transport oil, pump it out of the ground, move it, refine it. That process has a ton of emissions, then transport it again to the gas station. Even pumping gasoline out of the pump requires a bunch of extra emissions. That whole infrastructure is severely damaging, and there's no way you can eliminate that and be like a small, personal little, we plant trees startup company. You need giant investment. You need billions and billions of dollars. You need massive factories that, yeah, I'm sorry, are gonna use bulldozers with diesel, and they're gonna use diesel semi trucks to move the equipment in, and they're gonna need billions of dollars to do that in order to make enough EVs, in order to make enough batteries to transition the global fleet to electric. It's gonna require billionaires, basically, is what I'm saying. It's going to require people with lots of money and lots of investment. It can't just be small little, nonprofit organizations. I'm afraid that the amount of miles I'm currently driving, very few, the vampire drain might significantly affect the efficiency of any EV for me. Possibly, yeah. I mean, there's ways to account for it. You can measure it, but once you're measuring it, it's pretty easy. It would help because having the ability excuse me, to put in extra battery, you wouldn't need to buy a car with 400-mile range. Basically, all cars right now are howling 50% of the battery they don't need. Yeah, but it adds complexity, and there's a lot of people that are just going to want to have that long range at all times, that they're not going to want to go swap it out. Or I don't think you could get away with just shipping every EV with a 50-mile range and then ask everyone, because if there's massive demand for larger battery packs. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. I want to talk more about that in a second, because you can't just have infinitely scalable batteries in a vehicle, because it requires extra wiring, it requires extra equipment to hold the battery in, and also extra equipment to make it removable and easy to access. And there's a lot of people that, if you have an influx of road trips going on and you run out of batteries, then people aren't going to be happy about that. There's a reason, basically, the Nissan Leafs of the world don't sell very well. And I don't think they would sell a lot better if you could occasionally rent a large battery pack for it. I don't think that would change much. It's not that people are against environmentalism from corporations. It's just that corporations invest in the less effective methods in decreasing environmental damage. Maybe most do, but I don't think Tesla does. And I think the mindset doesn't change when going from an Apple or a Ford to a Tesla. People just think, oh, billion-dollar corporation, they don't really care. And the truth is, I do think they care. I think they actually take a lot of public hate and a lot of backlash in favor of what's better for the mission statement. Taker610 super chatted, says, would you have bought an Aptera? Are they legit? They seem pretty legit to me. I mean, I don't have an inner source or inner understanding of how the company works, but I follow Aptera very, very closely. And they are working. They just posted an update video today saying they're getting close to the Gamma stage of Aptera development, and they had Sandy Monroe, who I admire and respect. I love Monroe. They had him at their new factory building. showcasing how far and talking about how far they've come and how excited he is for Aptera. So I've seen Sandy do amazing things, and Monroe is a Monroe is a legit organization who's helped a lot of different companies come to production, and he invested in Aptera. He believes in them, and he's really excited for them. So I respect his opinion a lot, and I respect Aptera's design a lot. Their philosophy and their prototype has won me over. And yeah, if Aptera was out and delivering vehicles, I may have not bought a Tesla. There's reasons, even if it was out, I may still go with a Tesla just because the main advantage of going with an Aptera, in my view, is like the solar charging. I don't really need that much range for my use cases. Like, I'm buying the lowest range Tesla, and I'm not worried about that at all because I have the supercharging network. My biggest concern with the Aptera would be the seating options. There are, not a lot, but there's those edge cases where I do need to drive someone else, and only being able to drive two people would be kind of frustrating in a variety of circumstances. But the pricing of the Aptera is very good, and I like how focused they are as a company. They also, similar to Tesla, Aptera has a very, very focused mission statement. It's make the world's most efficient vehicle. And I think they're achieving that. They're going all in on aerodynamics, and they're also caring about manufacturing ability. They're trying to simplify components, and they're acting a lot like Tesla in that regard. They're like, we're trying to make the whole main body of the vehicle like 4 main parts, and they're even dropping the 4th wheel for the sake of manufacturing simplicity and efficiency. And they're just going all in on cost reduction, but also, you can get insanely good range out of an Aptera with a very low size battery pack because of how much energy it consumes per mile. I'm more of an efficiency guy. I'm not in the use case where I'm towing in the heavy snow in the cold climate. So I don't really care that much about having 400, 500 mile range electric trucks. I'm more about like what vehicle is going to consume the smallest amount of power, because I'm more about cost savings. That pertains to my job and my career a lot, because in case you didn't know, this is my full-time job. I'm a full-time YouTuber. This is just what I do for a living. And my income is volatile. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. And we don't know what the future has. There's no contract, YouTube doesn't guarantee you anything. I'm perpetually weeks away from my best or worst paycheck. And I just don't know what's going to happen, depending on the algorithm, depending on the news, depending on YouTube policy. My income is all over the place. So that's why I'm interested in lowering monthly costs. And, I'll buy expensive things up front. Like a Model 3 is a very expensive purchase. And, equipment for my channel and the camera and stuff. Once I have the money, I'm comfortable investing in high-priced things that I'm going to use a lot. I will buy something that's very, very expensive for the sake of I will get my use out of it. I'm going to use this every day, or I'm going to use it a lot, so I can justify spending. But I'm more interested in lowering monthly costs, because those are infinite. You can never just buy Netflix once. It will always cost however much a month, and it'll probably get more expensive over time. So the Aptera is one of those ideas of buying the vehicle once, and with the solar charging, it costs far less to own that vehicle than even a higher priced EV would. It's almost like, in the way many people can justify a Tesla because you'll save a lot of money on gas, the Aptera is like a whole other step below that, where like now you could save a whole lot more money by getting an Aptera, even if it was more expensive than a Bolt or a Model 3, although I don't think any of the Apteras are less than the Model 3. I just realized that. The Aptera starts at $26,000 with 250 miles of range, which is basically what the Bolt starts at now. But the big reason I would still prefer the Aptera is because with the solar charging, you wouldn't even have to plug it in on many days. Unless you're going more than 30, 40 miles that day, you won't even need to plug in the vehicle, which is incredible. I love that concept. And I want to see it come to market. I don't want to give away that many hypothetical plans, because Aptera is still a startup. They haven't delivered a product yet. So there's a lot of things that could change. We've seen these startups come and go. I'm rooting for them. I think of all the EV startups I've looked at the Aptera I'm most excited for. I was about to say of all the EV startups that haven't delivered a vehicle yet, but then I realized, you know what? I think I'm more interested in the Aptera than the Rivian. And that says a lot, I know, because I'm a huge fan of the Rivian, and I think the R1T is great, and I'm really rooting for Rivian as well because I think they've created a fantastic product with a lot of character, and I love the off-roading adventure aesthetic and just all of the all of the design cues that they applied to that vehicle to make it blend in with nature. I cannot watch enough videos on the Rivian. Anybody can post a video on the Rivian and I will watch it. Seriously. Like, I'm a huge fan of that brand, but I think I'm more excited for Aptera just because they are targeting pricing. They may not hit their price targets. That I would understand if they don't because inflation has hit them a lot. But I have a better chance of buying an Aptera than a Rivian. I'll say that. Rivians are starting at, $70,000, $80,000. Aptera is hoping to start at 26. Maybe they fail and they start at 30 or 35, but that's still way more achievable to me. And the concept, Aptera has this extreme emphasis on efficiency, and I'm a big efficiency nut. And Rivian is kind of the opposite. Rivian is kind of like, don't worry about the size of the battery, don't worry about how much energy it consumes. The point is, it's an adventure vehicle, and you can camp with it, and you can go off roading with it. And I'm like, excuse me. I love Rivian's software, by the way. Interior, exterior design is fantastic, but they do not have an emphasis on efficiency. If anything, I would say that's probably my biggest concern with Rivian is both in energy consumption and in capital, like the amount of money Rivian has. They're not very efficient. They're spending a crap ton of money, and they also require very large batteries to not go very far. 135 kilowatt hour battery pack to go a little over 300 miles. It's not very efficient, which is fine for the demographic they're serving, but I think for my use case and my preferences, the Aptera is more interesting to me. But I'm trying not to fall in love with the Aptera too much because there's always the chance that they don't make it to market or they don't stay afloat. I even have that concern with Rivian. Part of I came really close after the first mile event to putting down a deposit on the R1T. After we checked it out in person, both me and my wife were sitting there at first mile, and we sat in the truck together, and we were playing with the display and looking at the gear tunnel and all that. And we were just like, this is like the Swiss Army knife of vehicles. And we kind of sat there and looked at the configurator a little bit, and we were just like, this is, I don't know. I'm like, this is tempting. But then, part of me was like, well, I called this the Tesla fund. I can't change it to Rivian. But I was close. I was comparing the two with the Model Y, but ultimately one of the deciding factors, not the deciding factor, but one of the deciding factors against Rivian was this is a startup. We don't know what service is going to be like with this company. We don't even know if this company is going to stay around for the long haul. So do you want to buy a vehicle that is going to cost $70,000, $80,000, and what if they go bankrupt in 5 years? What's the customer service on that vehicle going to look like? It's not. I won't say it's likely they'll go bankrupt, but it's possible. At this point, I guess anybody can go bankrupt theoretically, but at this point, Tesla is set up for such high success. I have a very difficult time seeing a reality where Tesla goes bankrupt. They're making way too much money right now, and with no sign of slowing down in terms of profitability and the ramp up. To me, it's like 99.99% chance Tesla does not go bankrupt. With Rivian, it's not super high likelihood that they go bankrupt, but it's a lot higher likelihood than Tesla. Excuse me. Aptera looks extremely unsafe in my opinion. Yeah, they get that a lot, but they do have a fairly advanced roll cage that's the same kind they use in Formula One race cars, and they haven't done crash testing yet, but they've showcased and simulated that it's a lot safer than you'd expect. Basically, the general rule of thumb with any vehicle that Elon's talked about as well is like, I mean, you can build in airbags and you can build in crumple zones and stuff, but at the end of the day, the bigger car is going to win. Smaller cars are inherently more dangerous than bigger cars for the occupants, but I'm convinced, based on what they've talked about, Aptera is going to do everything they can to make it the safest possible vehicle, and I don't think it'll be substantially more dangerous than any other vehicle. Excuse me. Aptera DC charge speed is still a big unknown. The DC charge speed is an unknown, but the good news is when your efficiency is so good, it doesn't even matter. If you can charge at 50 kilowatts, that's gonna be what, like 50, like 50. You if you can go 400 miles on a 400 kilowatt hour. Sorry, not 400. Sorry, that'd be really bad. That's like GM levels of efficiency. If you can go 400 miles on a 40 kilowatt hour battery pack, you don't need fast charging. You could get like 15 miles of range per hour off of a 110 outlet, whereas a Tesla would get like 4 or 5 miles an hour. Because the Aptera is just like so efficient that even if you're not fast charging it, you'll get a bunch of your range back very quickly. EVs are cheap to operate, but a practical one is not cheap to purchase. Correct. Yeah, I would say that. Although I'd say the Bolt is kind of questioning that definition. It depends on what your definition of cheap is. Cheap is not a very specific term, but as far as new vehicles go, the average price of a new vehicle is around $45,000, $47,000. And now there is a 250-mile range EV. Granted, not the fastest charging, so road trips are going to be a bit longer, but over 250 miles of range for $26,000. That, I don't know. I would argue that as far as new vehicles go, that's pretty dang cheap. Everyone thinks you have to be riding an F-150 to be safe. Well, the truth is you'll probably be a lot safer in an F-150 than a Model 3, even with the fancy airbags and face. It just depends what you're hitting. If you get hit by a semi-truck, you're going to want to be in a bigger vehicle, than a smaller one. So the more vehicle you have kind of surrounding you, the more protected you're basically going to be, no matter how good the airbags are, the seat belts, and that kind of thing. But I don't think the Aptera is as unsafe as people would assume. Do you think Tesla will be able to put both the Vault and the Pass-Through in the Cybertruck? So I'm convinced yes, but for a weird reason. The Kilowatts was talking to Tesla employees at Cyber Rodeo, and they never got a picture of it, but the Kilowatts tweeted out that yes, there is a pass-through on the Cybertruck so that you can access the cabin from the bed. They said they couldn't get a picture of it, but they were talking to an employee, and the employee said yes. So I don't know if that design is finalized or will change, but as difficult as it may be, I'm predicting that it will be possible to have a vault door slide down and have access. Maybe it's one or the other. Maybe the only way for the bed to access the cabin is when the vault is unrolled, which might be problematic for some people. But yes, Wilson is correct, I think. The recall and the negative PR associated with the Bolt is suppressing demand. That's why GM had to cut prices on it. I know, because there's just no way with the inflation we're seeing and the cost of operations for everybody increasing that GM just felt generous, so they decided to cut 20% off the price of the Bolt. I just don't believe that. I'm sorry. I have a hard time thinking that margins are that good. That's a massive cut. That's a very, very drastic price cut. We've never seen Tesla cut prices like that. Usually, if it's an 18% adjustment, it's up. Never seen an 18% adjustment down. If you're just going for overall value, what is the best possible value? Bolt is going to be up there on the list, I think, at this point. It's got to be. It depends on how much you care about supercharging and autopilot and that kind of thing. I still think a Tesla is worth it if you have the money, but there's a lot of people that don't, and that's when the Bolt comes in, that kind of thing. If you just can't afford a Tesla, then the value's not there. Sam says it won't roll around corners, especially with all the torque electric motors have. Well, all of the weight is in the bottom, so no, it's a three-wheel. It's probably even harder to roll the three-wheel design. Look at the track testing on Aptera. Has been great, by the way. I love the engagement Aptera has with the community. They always do these online webinars. They answer as many questions as they can. They're very responsive on their social media. So I admire Aptera for just being vocal. Like, they have a series on their YouTube channel For a while there, I was hoping to do update videos on them because I'm such a big fan of the design. Like, I think it looks amazing. That I'm a fan of weird designs with purpose. I'm not in favor of like weird for the sake of weird, but if it's weird and it looks different from everything else, but that allows it to achieve something that can't be achieved elsewhere, whether it's efficiency or durability, like with the Cybertruck, it's very different looking. Doesn't look like any other truck out there, but they're able to achieve manufacturing efficiency and durability, and they're able to uh, build the truck far more different. They're probably going to achieve efficiency that we've never seen before in an electric truck, or any truck, I should say. So there's purpose to that design. It's not weird for the sake of weird. And same thing with the Aptera. I love that design, and their YouTube channel just goes into so much depth about their battery development, their powertrain development. Another great YouTube channel I'll give a shout out to now is Aptera Owners Club. He has gotten up close and personal with the prototypes and talked and interviewed directly with the Aptera software engineers and the people working on it. And they are just an open book. They just talk about anything you want. They're not hiding much. I think on their website, and a few times they have referenced that in the future they do want to do vehicles with more seats and more wheels. So I assume after they bring the three-wheeled Aptera to production, which rightfully I'm glad they are focusing on that first. They're not unveiling more prototypes before delivering the first one. But they've alluded to it at several points that I think they want to do a sedan, a four-seater or five-seater sedan with four wheels. Probably something hyper-efficient with solar, and it won't get the same efficiency as the three-wheeled, but it'll address a much wider market. If an established company like GM had pioneered EVs instead of Tesla, would all high-end EVs incorporate self-driving and become a defining feature of the EV market as it is now? Probably not, or at least it'd be a lot slower. Just because I think Tesla's approach to self-driving is the most quickest to results. Tesla's very much focused on scalability, whereas if GM, I mean, you could make the argument that maybe GM wouldn't have tried as so hard on Super Cruise if it weren't for Tesla and autopilot. But okay, let's just pretend Tesla didn't exist. They probably would still be having that same approach of we got to pre-map the highways and Super Cruise only works under certain conditions and that kind of thing. I don't think it. Yeah, it would probably not be as big a defining feature as it is now. I think Tesla, we owe Tesla a lot for the current EV market. I think a lot of people like to downplay their accomplishments and just act like, well, everyone's going electric. You know, Tesla was just a little early about it. It's like, no, Tesla proved to the world that you can do electric and make it good. You know, there were electric cars before Tesla that existed that people liked, but companies didn't think it was possible to build them at scale or to build them profitably. Tesla came around and started making electric cars cool and started showcasing the charging network and that people could actually buy an EV and have it be their only vehicle. And Tesla tried to, and Elon specifically came forward and just said, we want an electric vehicle to be the best vehicle. Not the fact that it's electric should be irrelevant. It should just be better than gas in every way. And that was not the narrative before Tesla. Before that, it was like, yeah, you know, for city driving and for, you know, economic purposes, you could do an electric car, but you're still going to want a gas car for all other needs or any kind of intense purposes. Tesla proved it was like profitable and scalable, and that's what inspired all these other car companies to be like, oh, wait, if Tesla can do it, I guess we better start doing it. They were not trying that hard before Tesla. From what I could tell, they were not. There was not much effort going in. Yes, I agree with Mao that GM has to be losing money on the Bolt, and they're not selling that great. So I'm also convinced, yes, that they're trying to. I don't think it's about market share. It's just to move vehicles off the assembly line. They're building Bolts now, and if there's not enough people buying them, there's no point in just having these cars sit around. So they'd rather take some revenue, even if it is at a loss. They were already at a loss with the Bolt. The Bolt was part of the most expensive vehicle recall in history. It was like several $1 billion to replace all of those batteries. And there's like, even before this price cut, I don't think the Bolt was profitable. So They don't sell them at particularly high volume, so I don't think GM cares if they lose money on them. Excuse me. The only bad thing about the Aptera car is the incorporation of solar panels. It's a bit useless as the car is so light and the battery itself. I don't understand what you're saying. I think the solar panels are probably the best part of the car because it's when you achieve efficiency that good, solar starts to make sense on a vehicle. If you don't have a vehicle that's very efficient, then there's really very few advantages to having solar. So no, getting an extra 30 or 40 miles of range per day for free, I wouldn't call that useless, personally. Um, Aptera is supposed to get between 60 to 80 miles per hour on level 2 chargers. Yeah, I mean that's close to level 3 charging on level 2. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Aptera caps out at like 50 kilowatts or so, but I just don't think that matters as much. On a Bolt, when your range is 250 miles and you have like a 60 or 70 kilowatt hour battery pack, that's when 50 kilowatts is a bit detrimental. But if your if your range is 400, 600, or 1,000 miles, then 50 kilowatts is plenty. What was wrong with the batteries for the Bolt to be recalled? Basically, they used pouch cells instead of cylindrical cells, which pouch cells are more in line with what your smartphone uses. And because EVs use a lot of power and need to be charged up quick, those pouch cells were more prone to heating up and catching on fire, basically. So they had to be recalled and fixed. And it was like the Samsung Note 7 situation. They were building the battery packs in and they were not being installed properly. And that was causing them to combust. The car is too small, so no, it makes no sense. There's a crap ton of people that don't have much more than one or two people in the car. Also, the trunk space is larger than that of a Model 3. So it's 25 cubic feet of storage space. I mean, there's two seaters that sell. People buy them. Um, yeah, it's not meant to be a family car. I don't think Aptera was fooling anyone with that. They know that if you have a family or you want 3 or 4 people in the car, yeah, the Aptera is not for you. But there's plenty of people, married couples, or people living by themselves who just want to drive alone. There's plenty of market for, you know, vehicles of with only 2 seats. Um, the problem with solar panels on a car is that you have to leave it outside all the time, very hard on the exterior and interior. Yeah, it's probably harder than leaving it inside, but I think people would rather take the extra range if they could, even if it was a little harder. I mean, it's not the same. The Aptera body is made of a composite. It's not the same paint or metal that you would put on the outside of a regular car. Um, so they're thinking about all these things. Uh, Tesla made a hardcore smackdown on anyone's brokerage account that sold Tesla stock to purchase a Founders Edition Roadster after the unveiling event. I know. I feel bad for them, but at the same time, if you can afford to wire Tesla 250 grand and not expect the car to come out for several years, you probably had plenty of money in Tesla stock anyway, or you had plenty of money outside of that. I don't think there was anyone that was, middle class wiring Tesla $250,000 after that event. Um, People can get by with a small car, although people generally prefer bigger cars, especially in the U.S. That's going to be an issue for Aptera. I don't think their issue is going to be demand related for a while. I mean, Aptera, if you go on their website and read about their mission, they were never planning for this to be a Model 3 competitor or a Model Y competitor. They were not hoping to sell as many cars as Tesla or Ford. I think their end goal was to do 40,000 a year, is what I remember reading. They know the size of that market. That's not. It's not that they're hoping to take sales away. It's meant to be an additional vehicle. I think it's meant to be a fun, high range, really low efficiency vehicle that can charge itself for those that just drive by themselves or with one other person. The grocery getter. But it's going to consume the least amount of power of any other vehicle on the road. Uh, Aptera will likely compete with the Smart in Europe. Yeah, I would much rather drive an Aptera than a smart car, that's for sure. I bet the Aptera is much safer than a smart car, and it'll consume less energy per mile, so it'll cost less to drive than a smart car, and I think it looks cooler. Driving around the Aptera feels like you're in the future. Driving around the smart car, I don't know. There's a stigma to it. Um, Aptera will do fine in the U.S. They just need to get their product to market. Yeah, I agree. I think they'll be the biggest challenge is going to be mass production. I don't think their challenge is selling people. I think they announced they have over 20,000 reservations or something like that. And they're a much smaller company than the big Tesla, GM, or Rivian, or those kind of guys. They're not targeting the same scale as those companies are. Um, the small car failed. Yeah, for many reasons, but I don't think Aptera will fail for the same reasons. Yeah, Rich Rebuilds also did a video on Aptera. That was very, very good. He was kind of excited for it. He was impressed by it as well. Those guys at Aptera are amazing. They have answers for everything, and you can tell they put a lot of thought and effort into their car, and they care about repairability and access to parts and that kind of thing. So I'm watching them very, very closely, and I'm really excited for the concept that vehicle might actually come out. And every day it feels like it gets a little bit more real. And I don't want to reveal too much, but if it comes out, we may change the plans. Um, I don't know exactly what we'll do, but if it makes it to market, we will probably end up driving one at some point. Um, yes, smart car failed in the U.S. because it wasn't a compelling product. Aptera is a much more compelling product. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot more demand and a lot more interest in it than the smart car was. 20,000 reservations for Europe. No, I think we're talking. I don't know if it's just U.S. It might be global. I think it was like 26,000 reservations. Man, where was it? I was just looking at it. Um, how many reservations does Aptera have? I remember them saying it was the most amount of reservation. That was 10,000 last year. And 2 days ago, it says has more than 22,000 reservations. So they've got plenty of demand for now. They're not going to be able to build that many for a while. And I'm sure once the vehicle is out and starts delivering, there will be another wave of demand. There's been far more Model 3s delivered than there were reservations for. So it's not like once you get through that backlog, no one ever buys the car again. Once people actually are driving it around and, owning them and using them, I think there will be a lot of interest, and they'll get I think of all two-seater vehicles or all two-door vehicles, the Aptera will probably outsell all of them. It will outsell all vehicles in its class because in regards to just cargo space, efficiency, and cost, it will be, if they're able to hit those prices that they were shooting, or at least the ballpark, if it's $3,000 or $4,000 more, I don't think that kills the product. Or even if it's $5,000 or $6,000 more, it's still really competitively priced. I don't think the smart car didn't fail just because it was small. There was several reasons. Also, this Aptera is not actually that small. It's wider than the Cybertruck, and it's about as long as a Model 3 is. It's like 2 inches shorter than a Model 3. So if your argument is just that it's small, therefore it's bad, the Aptera is honestly not that small. Volumetrically, it takes up a decent amount of space. It's just far more efficient, and we have data, we have proof that there's demand for it. So don't tell me, oh, there's no demand. Unless you're the Bolt, we don't have a demand problem with these EVs, especially because Aptera is probably going to be very, very low volume for several years. Even if they hit their deadline of deliveries by the end of this year, they're probably only going to make like 5,000 a year, 10,000 a year. So there's going to be a big backlog. Yeah, most small cars in the U.S. are boring, uncompelling. Yeah, Aptera's got all kinds of unique advantages to it. The acceleration on the Aptera is great. And the free charging thing, I think, is a huge selling point. No one else will be able to say that. The smart car was never able to say you could drive around for free. You still had to go to a gas station at the end of the day. 20,000 where? Europe, U.S., we don't know. Yes, we do. It's global. It's a total. There's 22,000 reservations in total. That's a lot. If I didn't have my Model 3, I would consider the Aptera. It's obviously not going to be anyone's main vehicle, but for daily driving for less than two people or less, which is a lot. A lot of people are driving. Having a supplemental vehicle that doesn't cost anything to charge is a huge argument. Um, Aptera is three-wheel. Wouldn't you need a motor class? It counts as a auto cycle. So you don't have to wear a helmet and you don't need a motorcycle's license because it drives like a car. They answer all these questions on their website, but um, we can dive into it if you want. I mean, I love talking about Aptera. I was hoping to do monthly update videos on them, but then their YouTube channel started doing that. I used to call it like, here's Aptera updates for December, or here's Aptera updates for February, and then not long after, they started uploading update videos, and of course they know what's going on with the company better than I do. So I was like, well, I don't think I should do Aptera updates if they're doing Aptera updates. So I don't make as many videos on them, but I still watch all their videos and I still think they're great. I have a first one of many on order now. It should be available by the end of 2022. Yeah, I mean, they're in startup mode, so I wouldn't hold much to their timelines personally. Like, they said they were going to start deliveries at the end of last year, and now they missed that, so they're saying end of this year. It's very possible they could miss that and say end of next year. It's there's a lot of unknown unknowns. They haven't really brought a vehicle to market yet, so they don't know how long it's going to take. And they borrowed my idea. I don't think they borrowed my idea. It's a pretty generic idea. It's just, you're a startup, you've got prototype development going on, and you want to update investors and reservation holders on how the company's doing. So, yeah, the company's fine. It doesn't. We don't really know in which market there is more demand. I don't think it matters. The point is there's demand in either market. I assume it's mostly in the U.S. because the Aptera is probably far too wide for a lot of Europe. Aptera is a very wide vehicle, and European roads are pretty thin. So they've talked about in the future expanding to Europe, but I assume, given they're a San Diego-based company that's done tours across California, most of the orders are likely from the United States. It doesn't. We have a good indication that there is far more demand than there is supply for. There's no need to assume there will be a demand problem when there isn't one. There will not be a Model 2 unless Musk suddenly changes his mind. No, I agree. I don't think there will be a Model 2. I mean, I'm not just talking about the naming. I'm talking about the idea of Tesla making a smaller, compact, more affordable vehicle. I think Tesla has proven, with the scaled up production of the Model 3 and Y, they don't need new designs. They just need to ramp up. We are so incredibly far away from Tesla having a demand problem that I think they are just going to, and their margins are so thick. It's going to be way easier and way cheaper for Tesla if they do run into a demand problem, which we're so far away from. They just pushed back the estimated deliveries again this morning. Model Y is still a year booked out for the base trim, and that's at 63 grand. They have like 30% margin on these vehicles. If demand starts slumping, they can just lower prices again. And that'll further increase the addressable market. More people will buy the vehicle if they lower prices. And I think it's going to be far cheaper and easier for them to just keep building what they're building. Look for ways to build the vehicle more efficiently, structural battery packs, single-piece castings. They haven't had time to add that to the Model 3, but it's because there's so many people ordering the thing. If they had a demand slump and suddenly they caught up on this tremendous backlog and everyone had a Model 3, okay, now you can redesign the manufacturing process, do a single-piece casting, do a structural pack, and boom, now you can sell the Model 3 for cheaper, address the market wider. Like, Tesla has proven how much demand there is for their vehicles that I don't think there is. It's not going to be from lack of capability. It's not that it won't be possible to make a $25,000 Tesla. There just won't be enough production capacity for it. The amount of people that would order that, it'd be insane. There would be so much demand for that car, Tesla wouldn't be able to match it. So they're going to price it to match demand best they can. And I think because of how much demand there are for Tesla's vehicles, that's going to result in essentially a tens of millions of cars sold per year, and most of them are going to be over $30,000 or maybe 35. Crap ton. My wife wants an EV but doesn't want to spend $45,000. Thoughts on what fits that price? I would definitely consider the Bolt now that they've had a massive price reduction on it. I feel bad for the people who are buying Bolts right now. That's the weird thing about this announcement. GM announced that the 2023 Bolt is going to be 20% cheaper. It's going to shave off $6,000, start at 26 grand, but you can't order it yet. And there's still 2022 Bolts selling for $32,000. You basically have a guaranteed depreciating asset right there. As soon as you buy your Bolt next month, it's going to instantly, resale value is going to tank hard for everybody who just bought one. But Mach-E base model, well, the Mach-E is pretty cool, but it's not that you can't order them anymore. You'd have to find them at a dealer, and the dealer's probably going to have a huge markup. So Ford doesn't let people order EVs anymore. But yeah, the Ioniq 5 and the EV6 are pretty interesting if you want more range and faster charging. They're going to cost more than the Bolt, but the faster charging is there. Yeah, I have a hard time recommending the Leaf. I don't think I would recommend that. There are some trash cars that are electric. I'm sorry. Not every EV is better. The degradation of the batteries with the passive cooling system is far greater than active. Yeah, like I know someone bought a Leaf. Someone in my personal life bought a Leaf, and the degradation had it down to like 50 miles of range or something. Let's forget that from 6 to 7 million cars onward, it becomes very difficult to expand production due to production efficiency being so low that it no longer makes economic sense. Yeah, I don't think anyone I don't think anyone was advocating that it was easy to ramp past 6 to 7 million. I think every step is more difficult. Going from 0 to 100,000 cars a year is difficult, and going every step of the way it gets harder. I don't think there's this magic number you hit at 6-7 million where it suddenly becomes hard. No, it's every ramp up is harder. But Tesla has proven they've been able to ramp up to extreme scale very quickly, faster than any other company. And I'm sure that because they have so much capital and they can hire the best engineers in the world and they can buy whatever land or whatever mining companies they want, if it's possible, Tesla will find a way to do it. And if Tesla doesn't achieve their goal of 20 million a year, it'll be because it wasn't possible. It won't be from lack of trying or lack of funding or any of that stuff. 2023 Mach-E orders open up August 15th. Okay, well, we've got a couple months to wait, but that's cool that it's opening up again. Okay. You think of the Ford Model E business spinoff? I didn't get what that was about. I didn't see what it accomplished. It felt like a big PR move, but I don't think it worked because you still have to buy Ford's EVs through dealers, and that was kind of my biggest issue with them keeping with the old Ford business model. I would just say move everything towards electric and battery production as quickly as you can. Stop investing in the combustion engine and don't waste money on ads. I heard Jim Farley say that, which was good. He said we're not going to waste any money investing on commercials for our electric vehicles anymore. They had already spent money on ads though, which I thought was dumb. So I'm glad to hear him say that, because we don't need ads for EVs unless maybe you're trying to sell the Bolt and no one wants it. Maybe the public perception of the Bolt is that bad. I don't know. Are there actually Bolts sitting on dealer lots? There are. I looked it up. Go on Chevy's website and configure a Bolt. Plug in your zip code. See if there's some available for like next day, because mine had that. I could plug in a random Bolt configuration and it was like, yeah, pick it up tomorrow. So it's sitting there waiting for someone to buy it. Will you get Tesla insurance with your Model 3? Use another company? We're going to get the cheapest insurance available. So if that's Tesla insurance, then yes. But if we can get better rates through Progressive or Geico, then we'll get Progressive or Geico. From what I've read, most people get the cheapest rates through Tesla insurance, though. So probably, yeah, I'll probably get Tesla insurance. Model E spinoff was to split off operations so they could sell their EVs at MSRP. It's not working. It didn't really achieve anything because there's still massive dealer markups on both the Mach-E and the Lightning. So I didn't really get the point. Men. Like, this is men. It is literally economically unfeasible if you multiply it by 2. The increase will only be 0.17 to zero point 0.5 in production increase, despite the company spending twice as much money on a factory. I don't know why this is well, you're turning it into a gender thing, but Tesla's goal isn't to double production capacity each year. It's to increase it by 50%. And so far they have hit that all the way up to over 1 million vehicles per year. So they're going to continue doing that. They hit nearly 1 million. They're over 1 million run rate with 2 factories. With the Fremont factory in Giga Shanghai, they get over 1 million per year. And they're building out more efficient, better optimized factories in Berlin and Texas. And they've said that they're going to expand Shanghai another 500,000. And they've said later this year they'll announce where the next Gigafactory locations will be. So I don't think it's that unfeasible that they won't hit the numbers they say they will, because they've continued to hit the numbers they say they will pretty reliably. You know, Elon's not super accurate with his FSD timelines, and sometimes Tesla doesn't hit their targeted price. Most of the time Tesla will unveil a price point and not deliver on it. But in terms of Tesla production capacity, they've been spot on for years. Elon was saying 500,000 by 2020 way back in 2014, 6 years in advance, and he was spot on. They were very accurate on how quickly they could ramp up production. And now they're saying 20 million by 2030. Even if they don't hit that, still, if they get to 12 million, that's insane. That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of EVs on the road. So vehicles on lot are usually still subject to markups for the most part. It's true. Sometimes you find a nice dealer that'll give you MSRP or maybe even a discount, but it's rare. It's hard to find. I have a reservation for Tri-Motor Cybertruck and a Rivian R1T. My R1T is around 93,000. If the quad motor Cybertruck is more, I'm going with Rivian. I highly doubt the quad motor Cybertruck is going to be under 100,000. I doubt it as well. I think you're going to end up going with the Rivian personally, which I don't think is bad. I think you'll be very happy with the Cybertruck or the Rivian, whatever you choose to go with. But the other good news is I think that you'll be comfortably easy to choose, because you'll likely get the R1T first. And if the Cybertruck comes out and they give you the specs on it and you find out that, hey, it has a bigger bed or it does something you like, or you road trip with your Rivian and you find out, man, I really want the supercharging and I really want autopilot or you know, any number of Tesla advantages, I think you'll probably be able to sell your Rivian for more than what you paid. I've seen secondhand Rivians going for $140,000, $150,000. People are paying a lot for those Rivians, even used. So when the Cybertruck comes out, you'd easily be able to sell your Rivian and cover the entire price of the truck, in my view. Just one option if you feel like trying out both. I'm just saying that when you create a new factory, you are effectively multiplying production by 2. No, that's not true. So when you increase production, we go from 100% increase in production to 50% increase. I don't know where you're getting it's a multiply by 2. Texas was targeting 500,000, and they were at a run rate of 1 million at that time. So they say they want to, you know, they used to. At first, it was just Fremont, and then on the side, through the profit margins of the Fremont factory, they were able to support scaling production there and also building a new factory. Once they built the new factory, now you have two factories mass producing Model 3s, Model Ys. They could support themselves, so they could afford their operating expenses, and simultaneously built 2 other factories. At the same time, Giga Berlin and Giga Texas are being built up, and they can afford all the construction, all the investment, and they're still more profitable than they've ever been while building 2 factories. So once you're building vehicles with 30% margin and you have 4 now, how do you think this trend is going to continue? They're gonna pick 3 or 4 more locations, and they'll be able to support themselves at 4 factories or 3, depending on where they want to build, and be able to comfortably. They'll be more profitable than they are right now, and they're already insanely profitable. So We're just going to keep this doubling effect going. Multiply by 2 equals factory you already have plus which factory you're going to build. I don't see how you're getting that, because they were at 1 million run rate. Not every factory is gonna equal what their current run rate is. If they're at a point where they have all 4 factories building EVs and they're doing like 2 million a year, that doesn't mean the next factory is somehow 4 million or 1 million. It's not how it works. But they can invest and build more than one at a time as they continue to grow. I'm talking about the increase in production that will decrease as production increases. All I'm saying is it's progressively difficult to ramp up production. I'm sorry. However you tried to explain it, it's not clicking in my head, and no one in the chat seems to be following you either. So I'm sorry. Basically, Tesla's going to build more and more EVs as time goes on, and they're going to continue expanding their current factories, and they will comfortably afford it. I don't think there's some magic wall that you suddenly hit. It's a wall that you're constantly pushing up against at all times. It gets progressively difficult to ramp, but you can work around those difficulties with high margin revenue and that kind of stuff. Okay, I don't want to be labeled. I don't like you shouting down someone just for their gender. I don't think that's appropriate, and I don't want to see it in the chat. I would never say someone is wrong or someone doesn't get my point because they're a particular gender. So please keep that out of the chat. I'm not interested in reading that. But Wilson says, you can't currently order an F-150 Lightning or Mach-E 2023 model year. Order bank opens up on August 15th. No word on when the F-150 Lightning orders open up again. Yeah, I think it's going to be a while because Ford does not ramp vehicles very quickly at all. At least the Mach-E's been out for a while, and it's nowhere close to this. It's not even selling at the same volume as the Model S, which is twice the price and has a bigger battery pack. But the F-150 Lightning, it requires an even bigger battery pack than the Model S does. It's like 110 for the standard range and like 130 kilowatt hours for the long range. Like, that's insane. Like, how many of those are Ford going to be able to build? I think they took about 180,000 reservations for the Lightning before they shut off the order page. So yeah, F-150 Lightning order thing could be gone for a while, to be honest. It may be gone for a year or more. What did I miss, Jim? What did they... Corey, so in case you missed it, GM lowered the price of the 2023 Bolt by a pretty massive amount, 18% price reduction, which now means that the Bolt EV with over 250 miles of range will start at $26,500, which is just insanely low compared to every other 250 mile range EV on the market. So they just have so much, I guess, lack of demand that they're piling up on supply, and they need people to buy these things. But because of the negative press and people scared about the recalls and stuff, I guess there's just not enough people buying the Bolt. But yes, I completely agree with Steve here. He says ramping is more about raw materials than factories. That's true. Factories, at the end of the day, I know there's some complexities and you know, there's some logic in how you lay them out with their groundwork and their water usage, but ultimately the limiting factor is not so much big concrete slabs with walls and ceilings. Tesla can build all of those they want. The bigger challenge is finding enough nickel, finding enough lithium, and finding enough raw materials to build all the vehicles you need. I pointed out a plaid I saw earlier today to my dad. He couldn't understand why they called it plaid. I explained it's from Spaceballs. I love how many... I want to make a meme about that. How many people have to explain Spaceballs because of the name of the Model S? Okay, Wilson is saying the Generation 2 Lightning is due in 2025. Sheesh. My God. That's when Blue Oval City comes online and the associated battery and assembly plans. Man, they can't accelerate that faster. I really wish they could get on top of that quick. Nobody wants those. Love my Model 3. Well, the Model 3 is like twice the price, but yeah, I understand why they're better. I would rather have a Model 3 as well, but some people can't afford it, and if you're sick of paying for gas and you're just looking for a practical form of transportation, I think the Bolt's a great option. Um, Make sure you get 3D Max Spider floor mats. I already have some floor mats, but I will check those out, I guess, Corey. Thank you. Tesla EVs are not first gen. Most others are. Well, the Bolt isn't, but I wouldn't say most. The Nissan Leaf is older than the Model S. I think the ID4 is on their second gen. Ioniq 5 and the EV6 I think are on their first gen, but yeah, Nissan Leaf and the Bolt have been around for a while now. I think efficiency in battery usage is going to prove the most effective for scaling production, to be honest. I think that Ford is trying to prioritize affordability, which is honorable because it makes it more accessible. You know, more people can buy the truck. But if you know, the reason I say that is because they reuse so much of the F-150 platform. That's why it's probably a lot cheaper to build the F-150 Lightning than other EVs, because they get to reuse so many components and parts from other F-150s. But still, if you require a 130 kilowatt hour battery pack per vehicle or 110 kilowatt hour for the standard range, that's going to severely slow how quickly you can ramp up. And all the complexities too. There's all these different color options and different wheels, and there's the Platinum and the XLT and the Lariat have all these different interior designs. Tesla, even though the Cybertruck's going to be expensive, I think they are just going to ramp it insanely fast. Even though the price will be high and the range won't be very good, Tesla, because of their efficiency and the manufacturing and the exoskeleton instead of body on frame and the structural pack, I think they'll be able to get the most efficient pickup truck in the world, and they're going to make the range a little bit over 300 miles, but it will require a substantially smaller battery pack than all of their competitors require. Like maybe 115 or 120 kilowatt hours to go 300 miles or something like that. Bolt is a Best Buy. I wonder how their new in-house battery is doing. Yeah, I mean, in terms of overall value, I would agree, but let's just hope they don't have another recall for sure. Yeah, I hate to say it. True. Wilson is correct. If you're looking for an EV and your budget is under $30,000, the Bolt is the best option for sure. I would seriously drive an overgrown kid's toy car sized for an adult in town if the price was right. I know it will never happen due to safety considerations. I just want to see. Please, Mark, promise me if you do that, you will film it and post it. That's what I want. I want to see you driving around the kid-sized car. But anyway, I got to sign off here, but I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Before I forget, I just want to thank again our executive and enhanced. Let me turn off bokeh here so you guys can actually read that. Enhanced and executive members of the Tesla Fund: Joshua Vinnick, Dennis P., Dr. Mark Choi, who's a dentist in the Woodland area, Bennett Williams, Joshua Levitsky, Robert Brindle, all of you guys also just watching, and the channel members, everybody helping us save up for the Tesla. It means a lot. It seriously is so flattering, and I feel honored that so many of you guys want to help me out. And I can't wait to get this car and film in it every day and document the ownership experience, tell you what I think and what I don't like and what I like. And I really hope one day to get an Aptera as well. We'll see if they can make it to market and talk about the ownership experience and all that stuff. Oh, you can film it with me, yeah. Sorry if I missed the comment earlier. I realized I glossed over it, but Mohammed, if you're still watching, I'll DM you details about filming the video. But thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for the super chats, and I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.